Alright guys, today we are rotating points around the origin. This is going to be a little bit different than the way you saw it in your regular math class because you're not going to be able to turn the paper. You're practicing on the computer, so that's impossible, obviously. So I want to show you a different way that you can do this. This will also be really helpful for your park test in the spring because you cannot write on it. So let me show you how to do it without renumbering your axes. First thing we need to talk about is in this grid that we're looking at, there are things called quadrants. Quadrants are a quadrant is when something is broken into 4 different pieces. So the quadrant is one of those pieces. Let me label these. They're labeled with Roman numerals, so they look kind of crazy. If you're not used to seeing these, got to get used to them. This is quadrant 1, and then they go counterclockwise. So your positive quadrant is 1. Your negative positive is 2, negative negative is 3, positive negative is 4. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to be referring to those today, so need you to be with me on that. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put our pen on the origin at 0, 0, and we're going to count along our axis to get to our point. It doesn't actually matter if you count along y or x, and I'll show you why in a minute, but I'm just going to count along y. So to get next to my point, I'm counting up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Along my axis, I counted 7, and I'm going to write 7 axis to keep myself organized. And then I need to count from my axis to get on top of my point. I'm counting into quadrant 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 steps into quadrant 1, and I'm writing that as 5 steps. I know this sounds crazy. 7x is 5 steps. I know. Let me show you what I mean, though. It says, rotate point A 90 degrees counterclockwise around the origin. I know that 90 degrees is 1 turn, and counterclockwise is to the left. I need to rotate that point 1 turn left. Remember how I counted up my y-axis here? I need to count 1 axis to the left, and that would get me on my x-axis. So to go from y to x is 1 step to the left. I know if I'm moving this point A 1 quadrant to the left, it's going to end up in quadrant 2. So, let me show you. When I counted up the y-axis, I counted up 7. I want to find that quadrant to the left, which is my x, and I'm going to count 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I need to count into my axis 5 steps. I know this is going to land in the second quadrant, so I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I can drop my point off, and my new point is at negative 7, 5. Okay, if right now you're like, what the heck is that lady talking about? Please, here we go. Rotate point M 180 degrees around the origin. What are the coordinates of M prime? All right, let's dig into what we know. I know 180 degrees is 2 turns, and it doesn't matter if I go left or right because 180 degrees is going to put us in the same quadrant, whichever way we go. I'm going to renumber my quadrants. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm starting in quadrant 3 because that's where M is, and I know I need to do 2 turns. So if I'm in quadrant 3 and I want to count 2 quadrants away, I could count 1, 2, and that would land me in quadrant 1, or I could count 1, 2, and that would land me in quadrant 1. Either way, I know that quadrant 1 is where my final point is going to end up. Now, let's do that axis counting thing. Put your pen on 0, 0. Then count along an axis. Pick one. Doesn't matter if it's x or y. I'm just going to stick with y, because that's what I did last time. I like doing the same things. I'm counting 1, 2 along my axis. I'm going to write that down somewhere. 2 axis. And then from there, 1, 2, how many do I need to count into my quadrant? 1, 2, 3. I just counted 3 steps into my quadrant. So I'm going to write that down. 3 steps. 2 axis, 3 steps. This is our crazy secret language we have now. Lucky us. So if I need to go 2 turns, I just counted down this axis. So I'm going to count 2 axes over. 1, 2. This is the new axis I'm counting along. From 0, 0, I need to count up 2 axis, and then 3 into my quadrant. So if you're like, oh, do I go left or do I go right? Remember, we know that it has to land in quadrant 1, so I'm going to count 2 along my axis, and then 3 steps into the final quadrant. 1, 2, 3. I can drop off my new point, and it's at 3, 2. You can keep listening to me, but the thing that's going to help you the most is practice. It might be hard today. Don't give up. Do your best.